Hello, and welcome to The Good, the Pod, and the Ugly, a film podcast where we cover filmographies of notable directors and actors. In 2024, we focused our now patented temporal pincer movement on all of Darren Aronofsky and Christopher Nolan's films and are currently two-thirds through a 4x4, 4 films by 4 directors. I am Ken, and I began this podcast with my son Jack in 2020, watching every Clint Eastwood movie, acting and directing. I'd like to say we are the preeminent experts on Eastwood and his films in podcasting, and a recent international poll by the BBC proves that contention, with Right Pod Clyde a distant second. Since we finished our initial run of Eastwood films, we gained another co-host in Thomas, lost Jack as a regular, and this year, a provisional co-host, Ryan, joined us. This is our Christmas episode, and we are going to be discussing Juror number 2, which is very special, because it may be the last film of Clint Eastwood's career. The circle may be complete for us in Eastwood. It is also our finale for 2024. So Merry Clint-mas.
Woo! Called for applause.
Please clap.
That's cinema, baby.
No, Mr. Wilson. I don't have to take that kind of talk from anyone.
That's right, you don't. How about going outside and trying to kick me around?
I'm not supposed to fight with the guests, Mr. Wilson.
I'm not a guest tonight, you yellow bastard. I happen to be an intruder.
Hey, guys.
Hey, and welcome back to The Good, the Pod, the Ugly, a film podcast where we normally pair films, but as you heard at the top of the episode, if Ken did his magic, we are instead celebrating Clintmas.
It's Clintmas, motherfucker.
And if he did his job at the top of the episode, you'd also hear his bad math, because if we covered 3 out of 4 films, that's not 2/3, or 3 out of 4 directors. For our
You know what? I meant, yeah, 75%.
The usual laws of arithmetic do not apply on Clintmas.
It does not, yeah. Yeah, we get a break from math during Clintmas.
You get to be a 94-year-old.
Well, he can't remember how many rounds he shot, so...
Do you feel lucky?
I just imagined an Inglorious Bastards like ending to, not Inglorious Bastards, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood like ending to Clint's life, as he's allowed to go out with someone trying to break into his house on Christmas Day, and he's allowed to go out doing the Dirty Harry.
Oh, I was good. Okay, yeah, not a flamethrower, but yeah, that'd be great.
We can make that happen, I guess.
If he had a flamethrower, should we head on down to Carmel? Is that the town he lives in? That he's the mayor. He was the mayor.
Yeah, Carmel by the Sea. Yeah. He just wanted to be mayor so he could keep golfing.
Have any of us ever been there?
I've driven through it. I don't think I stopped for any reason.
I think I went there as a little kid. Anyway, Clint Eastwood, Juror number 2, 2024. We are here with Jack.
Hi.
I talked about the co-host. And also, Ryan has been provisional all year, and we are going to be deliberating throughout this episode. And Thomas and I will reveal our findings at the end of the episode.
Just quickly for the prosecution, Ryan tends to not listen to the episodes that he stars on, so he has no historical knowledge. Just gonna introduce that into evidence early on.
Some of our best on-screen actors and voice actors never look at or listen to their work.
That's right.
It drives them crazy.
That's true.
And Ryan is so peerless in his ums and his various takes on movies that I would be full of anxiety listening to it if I was him too.
So is that an argument to keep him on the show or to kick him off? What are
it's an argument for Ryan to edit one episode so he can see how many of his ums are actually edited out.
I'll believe it's bad. I'll believe it.
Also, I guess in his defense, though, if I could play both sides, he is very punctual. He never has an audio issue because he is the sound engineer. And so he never started a podcast late.
Yes.
That's not what the audience came to listen to. They came to listen to us talk about Juror number 2, which...
I do have one point of clarification quickly. What is the difference between provisional and probationary?
Well, probationary would mean that I think provisional means that it's a little bit like a working interview.
Oh, fair.
Lease to own.
And probationary, you have to check in with us before every episode and afterwards, just so we know where you're at.
Yeah, just to make
Well,
sure I'm still on
probationary
the
would
pod.
be if you have a terrible take on the movie we're talking about today, we may put you probationary.
Oh,
Whereas if you don't,
well, that's provocative.
So as Ken said, oh man, I'm starting to Clint you. As Ken said, every episode, like every movie Clint has ever done, has been covered by this podcast. He did not, and I didn't watch, and I'm hoping I didn't miss anything. Juror number 1. But we'll go right into the sequel from 2024.
Woo.
My first viewing.
My first viewing.
Me too.
My first viewing. Yeah.
Yeah, and later in the episode, we're going to get into the strange release of this film by Warner Brothers, who Clint Eastwood was a creative partner with and made them billions of dollars over the last 50 years.
Yeah, that's great.
But let's just jump into the movie, though.
Well, yeah, normally we talk about the other movies that we saw the same year, 2024, and I don't think we covered another movie this year on the pod.
We almost did Long Legs, but then we didn't.
We did almost do Long Legs to add to the Cage on Cage, but we did not.
We all, some of us liked Rebel Ridge, and we almost talked about that.
We did, because we did Green Room.
Oh, yeah,
we almost
right.
did a 4x4 of Saunier.
Saunier.
Whatever. Yeah.
Noir.
Noir.
I think I'm going to rest my case with that.
I've been practicing my Midwestern pronunciation. Noir.
Huh.
Well, I'm glad that you brought that up, because one of the... Can we just talk about the movie and the strange...
Yeah, that's
strange
what this
route.
podcast is for, right?
Yeah, so let's not talk about other stuff. No, that was a segue. Yeah, so the screenwriter is Jonathan Abrams, who is not related to J. Abrams, although he is a Jabrams, not a J. Abrams. He has been a working screenwriter for a couple decades, but everything he's worked on, none of it has been produced. But he had been making a living, like writing scripts, doctoring scripts, rewriting scripts forever. And this script was actually originally written in 2008, and it came about with one of his friends is a lawyer, and they were having difficulty with their closing argument. And they called him up and said, "Yo, Jabrams, I need some of your Hollywood magic on my closing argument for this case." So he did a little razzle dazzle, inserted a third act MacGuffin. I don't know what he did, but the lawyer ended up winning the case, and kind of as almost a trade, he followed him around and was allowed to sit in on stuff that maybe writers aren't normally allowed to sit in on, and that's where he initially got the idea, where he was sitting in on the judge and the prosecution and the defense picking jurors, and the judge would not let people talk their way out of being on the jury. Because people always do that, right? They're like, I got my Klan meeting tonight, so I can't be here. And the judge is like, no, you're staying. So that's where he had the idea. He said, like, what if you were really... If you turned out you were the person that was responsible for a murder case, and the judge just wouldn't let you not be on the trial for whatever excuse you had.
Great high concept. Amazing.
Yeah, it's one of those.
I had that concept whenever I was high once.
Yeah.
Wait, I have a clarifying
they kept me
question,
on the jury.
though.
Okay, what's your clarifying question?
You're saying that the lawyer, this professional lawyer, right?
Yeah.
Couldn't figure out a closing argument,
Uh-huh.
so he had to have his screenwriting buddy
Yes.
write it for him.
They doctored it up. He goes. Yeah, he punched it up.
The lawyer couldn't. Okay, this is a professional lawyer that was in law school.
This happens to me.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, as a medical doctor, sometimes I have really bad news to deliver to your family, and so I will text Ken and see if he can help soften the blow or make it more of a surprise, a little bit more engaging.
Yeah, I often refer to Arrested Development with that doctor.
I was just about to say,
your son's going to be all right, and they're like, oh, thank God. Thank God. Oh, I meant that he lost his left hand. So he's going to be all right.
Yeah. The classic also you gave me was, hey, everybody with the living sun, raise your right hand. Wait, not so fast, you three.
Yeah, that was a great one.
Yeah.
So this script bounced around a long time. His original version, and I find that this is the most fascinating thing about the behind the scenes of this one. Eastwood eventually got involved in the early 2020s and read the script and said, this is the one for his potential last film, because the dude was 93 when they started directing it, is that he wanted to remove a lot of the pulpy elements that were in the script originally. As we discussed at length during our Eastwood seasons, Eastwood is famous for not tinkering with scripts, which is like a double-edged sword. Sometimes it made for great movies. Sometimes it made for really undercooked scripts that should have. But they worked on it for 3 solid months, pulling stuff out, clarifying. One of the early things is it took place in a generic town, which some of that's still in the script. Like, hey, it's Old Quarry Road. It's no fucking Quarry Road. It's Atlanta, Georgia. Come on.
Okay.
Well, someone just went mute.
I am sorry. Something happened to my internet. I don't know if somebody unplugged it upstairs or something, but it went away for 2 minutes.
We voted to kick you off the podcast.
All right, I'm just going to jump back in where I was before.
Yeah, so in 2000, was there anything that he had to change in addition to like taking out the pulpy stuff to update it from 2008? It doesn't really seem like there would be.
There was he already had a family. He already had a family in the original script, and for some reason it was a Land Rover, which makes him have a little more money than maybe he does in the Eastwood version, because it's a Toyota 4Runner, which a beat up one from the 90s.
Forest green.
And a lot of, when you are on jury duty, a lot of them, I know in Clark County, certainly, and a lot of other places, that you just call in because they had to adjust for COVID. So kind of like when they're going and they're having that little thing and everybody's in the same room. Most states and counties, that doesn't happen that way anymore, because they did it with a system that is less annoying for people to have to go in unless they're desperately needed. So a lot of that stuff is a little dated, but whatever.
I still think that they're going to do that as just a movie trope, right? Like they're not going to have people Zoom call for jury selection if you see a movie these days.
Yeah, I'm glad that they did, because anytime I see any mention of Zoom or COVID or anything in movies, it just pisses me off.
Yeah, same. So I didn't have a problem with it. And then also because of changing the character into just he wanted him to be an everyman, and focus on like the characters caught up in what he called an ironic coincidence. Mm-hmm. And another thing they did was they gave specificity, like I was saying before Ryan left us, of the city. Eastwood filmed infamously in our podcast, Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil.
Shout out.
In Savannah, Georgia, which is one of his worst movies. And I almost feel like this is kind of like him going back and saying, that's one I kind of wanted to have a redo for.
Did they have the tax incentives back there when he did that movie with, we can't say his name, can we, on the podcast?
Legendary actor Kevin Spacey.
Yes.
Oh, there goes that explicit warning on the podcast. Shit.
Abortion.
And I think it was originally in a generic city, and you kind of lose size and scope, that if this were in a large metropolitan city, like it were filmed in New York, the story wouldn't really work. And if it were in a super, super small town, like one of those towns with just a main street, a bar, and a hardware store, it also wouldn't really work because everybody knows everybody.
Yeah.
So I think giving the specificity of kind of a mid-size town.
So they didn't choose that because Toni Collette signed on, and being a famous Georgian actress with a classic Georgian accent.
You could not tell she was from Eastern Europe at all.
She demanded they change venue so she could be the most Southern actress ever on screen.
Yeah. Yeah, so Eastwood wanted to tone all of the more crimey, pulpy stuff. I think that if having seen a lot of movies, you're kind of thinking he's going to get into he's going to have to kill that cop kind of stuff, and like, whoops, I accidentally killed the cop. Now I got to cover that up. I don't know if that was part of the plot, but there are things that you've seen before that this could lead to. But Eastwood really worked with Jabrams a lot on the script, and I think, from my perspective anyway, it kind of shows because after Cry Macho, his previous film, which was based on a script originally rewritten for Arnold Schwarzenegger, and they tried to keep some of that in there, and Cry Macho is terrible.
I went easy on Cry Macho. That would actually be an interesting one to revisit for our Redux season, because I thought that being his final movie, I was a little soft on it.
Uh-huh.
But now that it's not his final movie, it's safe to say that it's not very good.
Yeah.
Are you gonna do it with kid gloves for this one as well, Jack? Or
no.
Okay.
I quite like this movie though.
Yeah. Eastwood also is reunited with Yves Bélanger, a cinematographer that worked with him on The Mule and Richard Jewell,
yeah.
Which you should just have Richard Mule, and it should be a double feature.
Oh, the guy from Cry Macho scored it as well.
Yeah, and he also is working with Joel Cox, who I don't know how much Joel Cox is actually working, and his son, who is his long time editor back from the 70s. So there is some stuff to tie it together from the early parts of his career.
It's his crew. It's the Eastwood crew.
Last El Paso. I do think visually this movie looks a lot better than some of his movies from the teens and the aughts, which were the contrast was turned down quite a bit. Anyway,
it does. Yeah, speaking of Cry Macho, that movie and most of his movies previously, I don't really know about The Mule. I don't really remember that one. I might have fallen asleep. They had like a sort of flat, uninspired TV-ish look to them that seemed like he was just going with the first take on everything and getting through it really quickly. But this movie is visually the most interesting thing he's done probably since, I don't know, American Sniper.
I would agree, and it's interesting that you say that because on paper this is probably the most TV project of the ones that you have mentioned. They don't scream big screen cinema, but they also harken back, which I hate, to like legal thrillers of the 1990s. Those mid-size films. When I worked at the Movie 6, which had 6 theaters, there was always a movie in theater number 5 that was like for the olds, and they would run for months, and you would have like the same older couple. They would come in every Tightwad Tuesday, and they would see these movies, and they were just like this. They're not too long. They're a pleasing story. There's no graphic violence or nudity. Yeah, and it's a good story. People go see a movie for a good story, and that's what I think this is. And it really of Eastwood since his early 90s becoming an elite A-list director, this is probably one of the easiest to go down in this genre, this mid-range potboiler melodrama that he has done.
Yeah, it seems like a little bit of a return to, I don't know, going to see a Eastwood film, in the sense that you're saying, where you don't have to worry about anything being too controversial, or because it feels a little bit like Richard Jewell, American Sniper, those, or I don't know, charged with a sense of like the misunderstood little guy,
more overtly ideological.
Yeah, even though, and then of course you have the Changeling, and the movie that doesn't exist, which might have something to do with like somebody who's dead. What was that one?
Oh, Hereafter.
Hereafter.
Yeah. So yeah, this feels like it's a return to the 90s in a way, cinema going.
Yeah.
Even though you would have to be very quick acting on one of 2 or 3 Tuesdays to be able to watch this in the theater.
Yeah, we could talk about that maybe after our reaction.
Yeah.
Oh wait, let's do a little bit more of a plot synopsis.
I was just going to say, who
Yeah.
wants to take a stab at...
I got a one-sentence one, which
Okay.
isn't fully expansive because it leaves out J.K. Abrams' hat. Dude on jury duty with pregnant schoolteacher wife can't sell his car.
Jack, do you want to take a stab at the high concept summary of this movie?
Yeah, Nicholas Hoult is 6'3".
Is that real?
You know, one of my first notes was tall guy, married tall guy with a pregnant wife, and I wondered if if Eastwood considered playing the part.
I mean, I wouldn't trust him behind the wheel, Clint Eastwood these days. But no, Nicholas Hoult, we talked about a lot whenever we. We never released the Singer episodes. He was Jack the Giant Slayer and Beast. In the X-Men movies.
Yep.
This is the second Christmas movie that we've done where the protagonist's signature move is hitting someone with his car.
Wait, what was the other one?
World of Kaneko.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that was a good one. Yeah, so Nicholas Hoult is called to jury duty. He can't go even though his wife's in the third trimester and having a difficult pregnancy. And the judge is like, "What hours do you work, son?" And he's like, 9 to 5, 9 to 6. He's like, "I promise you won't be here 1 minute after 6 p.m. You're on the jury." And then he starts to realize that the guy that's on trial for killing his girlfriend, that he may have been responsible for hitting her with his Toyota 4Runner.
Forest Green.
After hanging out in Rusty's
Roadhouse.
Rusty was the name of Eastwood's character in Rawhide.
Oh yeah.
Oh
Yeah,
wow.
So we're going to some deep connective tissue there. He starts to realize that he was responsible. He may have hit her, and she fell off a bridge. And the prosecution is saying that she got hit in the head by her boyfriend and thrown off the bridge. And the medical examiner, who I guess kind of sucks because we can't trust the system in any Eastwood movie, gets it wrong. So he has to start working within the jury to try and get the guy off because he didn't do it, but then he also can't implicate himself. It is one of the best high concept, once in a lifetime ideas. And when Jabrams had it in that courtroom, he knew he was onto something. And it's no mistake that this is the first script of his to actually get made.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is a very clever concept. When I'd heard about the movie before seeing it, for some reason, I assumed he knew going into the trial that he was ultimately responsible for the death. So the way that played out was very surprising.
Yeah, and I think the greater thing there, or the gear within the gear, is that Kiefer Sutherland, who is only 5'9", though his dad is 6'4",
Tall king, big D,
is we see him earlier on as juror number 2 goes to an AA meeting after maybe day 2 of the trial. And then we see him later because he's also an attorney, and juror number 2 asks him like his thoughts. And what we then find out that juror number 2 met his wife doing community service after he had like his second or third accident drinking and driving. Yeah. And so he was volunteering at the school and met her. And from Kiefer Sutherland's, as a lawyer's perspective, if he were to say anything, he would be put on trial for like a felonious killing.
It would it would automatically be negligent homicide equivalent because they would presume that he was drinking.
Yeah. Yes, and we the audience are shown in flashbacks of him at the bar with a drink. I'm going to spoil the ending of the movie. It does turn out that he wasn't actually drinking, which I think was one of the big surprises of the entire story. I just assumed he was because, they go to great pains to show him kind of wobbling around and whatnot. The girl who plays the murder victim is actually one of Eastwood's 63 children. She is great, and what I love about the flashbacks to Rusty's Roadhouse, or where the fuck it is that he does change it a little bit, not in a grand Rashomon way, but particularly the double birds.
Yes,
like the waitress who is watching it and shooting it with her cell phone. When Francesca Eastwood flips off her boyfriend, her fingers are like right in his eyes.
Yeah,
it's one of the great double birds.
I think she actually pushes him away. His face away with the double birds.
It's fucking great. But then when you see the perspective elsewhere,
from the boyfriend's perspective, on trial.
Yeah, it's more like her being aggressive and him being like, "Oh, hey, but come on." But it's subtle enough where it's not like it's not changing the colors and making it.
Yeah, I don't think I picked up on that. I must have been asleep for that part.
Yeah.
Or
And
you were in the bathroom.
she's like 5 feet away from him and walking away when she flips him the double birds in his telling of it.
Yeah, it's. I've never seen someone flipping someone else off used as a crucial point in showing how difficult memories are in
the two other
memorizing
pieces
perfectly.
I think help with the gears in there is that juror number 2 thinks that he hit a deer.
Yeah.
And so he gets out of the car to look and doesn't see anything and goes on, which is what he will tell his wife, and which he believes because he has no knowledge of this case.
And he told her he was somewhere else that night because he knew that she would know where he was if he said it was Old Quarry Road down by Old Man McGivery.
He told her he was on Peachtree Pass.
Sobriety Lane.
The scene where Holt gets out of his car and checks to see what he hit is a fairly small thing, but it's so crucial that it's done perfectly. Like he looks over, he hit the woman and she fell off a bridge, and so we don't
know that.
We don't know that, but that is what happened. And when he goes and looks,
we don't know that. I'm gonna fight this. We don't. We do not know that he hit her with his car.
That's true. We never see it. That is true. And I was thinking about that too, Thomas. About to the very end, you could still say that the boyfriend did it.
Interesting.
Or that she just slipped.
Or that she just
slipped.
You're going
to go with
and
that.
He did hit a deer.
Yeah.
So the other piece, I said there were 2 things, even finer gears. The second one is that in the jury selection, it's the how many people are on a jury? 12?
Yeah.
Okay, 12 Angry Men scenario where he knows that the guy's probably not guilty. And so he's the holdout.
Yeah.
We find out that another person who is on the jury is a retired police detective. Someone says like officer and he corrects him and say detective. And that's played by J.K. Simmons, who we all know from whenever we covered the Postal, whenever we were doing our 4x4 that included UA Bowl. He's candidate Eugene Wells of the Fuck You Party. Who talks about how only bankers died in 9/11.
Simmons is a national treasure.
So yeah, you have J. Jonah Jameson in there saying, he becomes a little bit more convinced. He's like, "Hey, this is kind of police procedure. You find somebody, you have a bias. You're looking for the person. You assume that it's going to be they're like a domestic dispute, and so everything's going to line up, and you're going to only find the evidence. And they didn't really look at anything else."
Yeah.
So he starts to put pieces together that then allows him to find vehicles that might have hit or had a if it was a hit and run, vehicles that had body damage, body work done in town. And then he's taken off the jury. But he's the one, like he's the linchpin in turning anybody else to having a hung jury.
And Holt being the holdout is kind of the one that spurs that on. And so 12 Angry Men, that has to be mentioned. Obviously, Jabrams was a huge fan, and the initial scene with the jurors in the deliberation room is almost exactly the same as a similar scene in 12 Angry Men, and that was completely intentional.
I have to say, I have never seen 12 Angry Men.
Wow.
I know. I was going to watch it last night, but then the Ducks game was really good, so I didn't. So no spoilers for that.
Yeah.
I know it's like a
Well,
100-year-old movie.
we
but...
can't. I think we gotta talk about 12 Angry Men some to talk about this movie, Jack. But I'll try and keep the deets to a minimum.
Yeah,
And the really quick and effective introduction of the characters on the jury is super tight. Character introduction, exposition, where you know them right away. They're all played by this complete crack team of ensemble actors. Leslie Bibb as the soccer mom who has just seen her kids go to college. Her haircut is so precise and severe, it actually started stressing me out. And when it stressed me out so much because I'm just worried that like a hair is going to get out of place and it's going to be distracting because it's so perfect. When they go on the trip to the crime scene,
field trip,
her hair is actually different, and I was like, "Oh, this was filmed after the strike." It was parted on the side and set down the middle. That's how effective her hairstyle was. Every time she was on screen, I was like, "How do they do that? How do they get hair to look like that? It looks like a helmet."
Yeah, I didn't pick up on that at all.
Anybody who hasn't seen Juror number 2, now you watch it, you're gonna miss the entire movie because you're gonna be focusing on her hair.
Hypnotized by the hair.
I apologize.
Yeah, and there's some really interesting, like, you can see what drew Eastwood to the script, I think, because the detective, J.K. Simmons, basically says "fuck the system" in so many words, because he's talking about how the cops, he was a cop for 22 years or whatever, and he's talking about how they're taking shortcuts, they're being lazy, they get one suspect and they immediately hone in. They were talking to that, there's one eyewitness and they immediately go there, and later you find out like he's super lonely and everyone was just so nice to him and he wanted to be part of something and help out.
Which is,
and that's
go on. No, I'm sorry to interrupt, Jack. Go on.
Well, that's a lot of what we've discussed with Eastwood and his whole career, and being very libertarian, sort of anti-system. And on that same note, there's a lot of interesting racial tension within the group, I think. That comes, I mean, the two characters that are played by black actors in the movie, you could kind of see how they could be written without race in mind.
They were very well drawn as having their blackness be part of their identity, but not like, look, I'm the black lady here, and so I'm going to say that, it was very subtly done. Almost everything you called out, Jack, is a direct reference to 12 Angry Men. From the witness who just wanted to feel special, to the way ethnicity plays in all of these relationship dynamics. J.K. Simmons' character is kind of the element that is not in 12 Angry Men, and until he really asserts itself, it's almost like a remake in the way it's going along.
Yeah, I would say, unlike 12 Angry Men, which is, I think, based off of a play, and is a bit of a bottle movie, this movie, if you haven't seen it, listener, actually very little of it maybe a quarter of it occurs in the courtroom.
And
the script and Eastwood are more interested in the different, I don't know, dynamics or trajectories or stakes at play for other people in the film.
And that is so... I was actually a little bit bummed when it started leaving the courtroom, because I love 12 Angry Men, and I rewatched it a couple nights ago after watching this, just because it was so reminiscent. But I thought it was just going to be a straight riff. So when they started leaving the courtroom more after jury proceedings had started, I was initially bummed. But I think my galaxy brain take on this would be that it's kind of an intentional update of 12 Angry Men and commentary on it, but they're very, very similar thematically. I just thought that was so fascinating. And the way it is different is because Eastwood's ideas about justice are so tied into, like, how can you isolate a single act from a person's life and make some sort of value statement about them based on this 1 second thing they did. And that's not the way 12 Angry Men unfolds, that's not at all part of that narrative. So it's a really, that he does go out of the courtroom does make it more of a standards 90s movie. It does make it a little bit more pulpy, but it also thematically opens it up really broadly in a way that I thought was amazing.
Yeah.
You know, at the risk of having the explicit content warning show up again, the two cocks behind the editing of this movie, David and Joel, the editing of the first 30 minutes of this movie, where it goes from opening statements to the end of the trial, is so brisk, but it never feels like it's rushed. But they pack so much information by cutting from the prosecutor and the defense, and not just doing a linear telling of it. Thomas actually turned, because we watch this together at my house, Jack, Thomas, and I. He actually said that you thought it was like skipping back and forth in the trial before maybe it was an editorial decision.
Said, don't they normally like take turns? They don't like both go up there and just debate at the same time.
Because it's edited like that.
Yeah,
it is, and it's done thematically, and I think that it interesting. Yeah, I think that I was going to comment on that, Ken. So thank you for introducing that. Surprisingly, this film moves at a very nice clip. I don't really like that determination typically of, if I see somebody and they speak, they're going to show up again in the film. I typically like a little bit more of naturalism, but with jury selection, anybody who speaks is going to be on that jury. And so you have the economy of, okay, I know who that person is or what their objection was to trying to be during jury selection, and that will play again later in the film.
And speaking of the editing, Thomas, the way those flashbacks with Holt are handled with the wipes and stuff, which can be such a tacky tool if used wrong, but they're so just subtle and graceful, and it really helps propel you through the story without a lot of baggy exposition by any character at any point.
Totally.
Yeah, and I think the casting of Holt is really important here, because his tension is not, he doesn't have sweat beads coming out like a cartoon character, but his eyes are so expressive when he is remembering, and when he is thinking later in the story, it's not overly acting. It just seems like something's going on behind the eyes, and it could have been a very showy bad performance if I think Eastwood or another actor, maybe Eastwood playing it. Like I said, he's a dad to be. He could play it. 94, I could do it.
I will challenge, though, that Holt is an everyman because he's 6'3", which is not right.
It's all king.
What you say, Ken, reminds me of there's an Orson Welles movie where he's like secretly a Nazi hiding in a small New England town, and
Mr.
every
Arcadia?
time. No, it's before that. I can't remember what it's called. But every time they cut to him, and nobody's supposed to know that he's secretly a Nazi, but every time they cut to him, he's sweating and his eyes are all bugging out of his head. And Holt could have totally done that, but he really, even when he gets so guilt-racked and so anxious, he plays it as if this could just be a weird guy who's always in his own world. Like, nobody ever has a bead on the way he normally is, so it doesn't play as being overly telegraphed to me.
And it has the classic Eastwood score, where it's most of his best movies have very subtle scores, where it could have been very bombastic, and calling attention to every emotional move. Like, there's a scene like, do you see that man in this courtroom right now? That's one of the best scenes. And then Holt is like, oh, I'm going to drop something as everything pans.
His AA coin.
Like, AA coin. Great stuff.
And that early scene where we first find out what's happened as he is realizing that he maybe didn't hit a deer, and we're getting those flashbacks. It's the most, I was so on board at that point, because I was like, this is the most Eastwood way of doing this story. Like, it's just so streamlined, it's so simple and so perfect, and uses a lot of narrative economy very well. And Ryan, you said earlier that you thought this movie would be him going in already knowing that he had done this.
Uh-huh.
I assumed the same thing from the trailers, and I was expecting him to be more of like a Patricia Highsmith character. Where he hit. I thought he was going to hit her, and then he was going to try to cover it up, and then he would get called for jury duty. And I was a little disappointed that it wasn't that early on, because I was like, are they gonna kind of whitewash this and make him a good guy? And then they don't. He's a very complicated protagonist, and that's the thing that I could imagine the old people going and seeing this movie and being like, but he wasn't a very good man, was he?
Yeah, they want the bad guy to get caught like they were in the 1950s.
Yeah.
So I think he gives a great performance when he's on that bench with Colette after the trial, after the sentencing.
Yeah.
And he gives the speech because it does seem like he has some guilt and he's trying to like work through it with a little bit of aggression. Here's the thing that I bump up against. If we're getting a little bit to reactions and also go into the plot. And maybe this is just a difference between whether or not you think The Collector is on the first one or two best films that we watched for Weiler, or the back end of it. But there were a little too many stakes, right? So Colette's character being a DA running for office, I can accept that he picks up her cell phone and hands it to her, and then we know that he's a good guy, right? And then he gets selected, and I can buy her going and doing her own research to figure out if this person's really guilty or not. That the local reporter, which is what we're talking about for Holt's character, doesn't know anything about this trial. About this.
Well, he's a lifestyle reporter for a magazine.
He works in media in the town, goes to his office, knows the custodian.
Right.
That he has no idea about this murder. Fine. I can understand that. It's a there's a murder case. Maybe it's a large enough town. This isn't sensational news. That the election's going to be swung one way or the other for DA's office because of this trial.
So you think that, given the stakes for the Colette character, that there should be more media attention to this trial that Holt's character
I think that there should have
about.
been nothing about her winning or losing the DA based off of this trial. I think that it should have had nothing,
it's so thematically important, but it is strained. Yeah.
I think, Ryan, you saying it's thematically important, that it's hard to imagine what it is saying beneath the surface about the American judicial system, where somebody not doing their due diligence just because you have a slam dunk of a guy with a serpent crown gang, a drug dealer, a dead white girl, and maybe that's all they need to swing an election. That tracks with me as far as Eastwood goes.
Yeah.
But I don't think
it's very old Hollywood in its.
There was never a crowd of press with flashbulbs popping outside the courthouse anyway.
But she does give an interview and does make speeches. I do like that the speeches in those interviews, they're populated. Actually, one of my favorite scenes, just for being a cinema nerd, is the baby shower, because you have a bunch of extras outside of a window or outside of their house for about 2.5 seconds. And there's and it's just great. You have a populated world. I felt like whenever Colette was on screen talking to reporters or giving her speech for office, that felt weirdly finite for the number of people who are there and the setups.
Yeah. Fair enough. I agree that. Well, I think that it's in a sense, I think it's the same thing we were praising before, where I think the way Colette's character is handled is done with a scent of Clintonian economy, where it's just like, we got to show that that there are stakes for this character, so we'll make the election all about her, because it is important, like I said, to thematics. But as far as the realism, as far as the believability of the worlds, that is also the part that I strained, that I struggled with the most, Thomas.
Yeah, that makes sense. I was fine with it.
It's a movie world. I don't
Yeah.
know. I didn't
And
question it too much.
for me, watching a lot of becoming such an old film nerd in the last couple of years as I have, that kind of setup is very traditional for like your 1940s. You got to set up why the attorney is a big deal in one scene.
Yeah.
Type of storytelling that he. I haven't seen a lot of his recent works, but all of my favorite 90s and stuff from him is strongly working in that classic cinema vein.
Totally.
Now, my favorite thing that we haven't talked about probably in the film, which seems like a little departure for Eastwood, maybe not, is Juror number 13.
Oh, I was going to say an age-appropriate father-to-be, but go ahead.
Well, he's not in it, so...
Yeah.
No, Juror number 13. So whenever Simmons gets kicked off the jury for investigating on his own, you have somebody who's into podcasts and true crime.
Yep.
And there's a moment whenever they do the field trip, so they go back to the bridge where the body was found underneath. There's a moment, and it's not overstated, just she's in the background counting paces.
Yeah.
For some reason, she's going to solve the crime in her head.
Yes.
For some reason, she's counting out something by pacing it. And there's no explanation, never comes back. But I love that there's some, it's not just a dour movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or a movie that's just like full of the strong familial emotions of like, oh, I'm a father to be. I have to protect my family.
Mm-hmm.
I'm misjudged. I'm in this. I'm in this ironic situation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think this goes for a tone that is light enough, but not so light that it to the detriment of the seriousness of what's happening. But yeah, everybody seems to have their little bit, and it's not like, okay, we're going to go this guy with his bit, but they all seem to act together and have lives outside the frame of the movie, which is really important for
very fleshed out characters. Yeah.
What was my verdict again? What was my?
And how he makes friends with the old lady sitting next to him. So, just the details like that are so cute. Even the judge has like a strong personality behind her, 10 lines or whatever.
Yeah.
I think of Eastwood's trial movies. I mean, we have Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil.
There's been a murder in Savannah.
Sully is a trial movie.
Oh yeah,
that's also based on a lot of flashbacks to what happened.
Birds.
What else? Am I forgetting anything? What other trial movies did he have? True Crime, obviously, which we disagreed on and still disagree on.
What was that? Speed Zoo? Was that
Speed Zoo? Yeah.
Jeez.
Wow, this is bringing back a lot of core memories. This is great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was the verdict? What was the split on True Crime?
I thought it was terrible. He's like a 70-year-old guy with like a 4-year-old kid.
Yeah, but that tracks for him in real life.
It does. Yeah. I did not like it. It was one of those Eastwood movies that needed a few extra passes on the script and maybe a few extra takes.
Wasn't there a chip rack? Was that the movie with the chip rack?
No, I don't know.
Whether or not the guy was guilty was if he could see, you couldn't see it because the chip rack would be in the plate.
Oh,
yeah.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
And you can't ever move a chip rack or put one in months after a trial.
But this does feel like that level of Eastwood with like the True Crime or Blood Work or even Gran Torino, which he was in, but he's not in this one. But it really feels like one of those mid-level movies, and the extra work they've done on the script really shows compared to those movies, I think, anyway.
And it's got so much of that great gray morality to it that I was not expecting to see in this. I really thought that they were gonna purple noon it, which is what I say when a movie has to end with the bad guy getting caught.
Or the person who did a crime getting caught, because he's not a bad guy. That's what the movie is kind of arguing.
Yeah, and all of its arguments about the system were never really in your face, and everything about it was really surprising to me.
At the same time, it's not. There's no bitterness. Well, if there's bitterness, there's no. I'm thinking, like, it did give me a sense of civic pride.
Huh. I think
people weren't allowed off the jury selection. That they did their job. It seems.
What?
No,
you're making me glitch out here, Thomas.
No, I think that, though the system didn't work, I don't feel like it was a cynical take on the system because of the Colette character, because of the situation around what was going on.
It was very much. It is terrible, but also the best thing we have.
Oh wow!
What are you guys talking
you guys
about?
Are totally fucking
really.
So yeah. My take. I think it's very intentional that this is his last movie. I think it's super political, and I think it's saying everything you guys are doing here is meaningless, and that goes back to. Jack, I don't want to. Maybe Jack, put your earmuffs on,
or take your headphones off.
Yeah, take your headphones off.
Double birds. He's given the microphone.
So
go ahead.
With 12 Angry Men, a interpretation of 12 Angry Men is that you are excited because Henry Fonda seemingly does right by the system, but the whole movie is actually an exercise in undermining the judicial process. And I thought that was like what this movie was picking up from that movie and turning straight up so that you could say, like, no one here is guilty. There is no justice possible. All of this is an exercise in cruel futility. Jack can put his headphones on.
He ended it with the words "cool futility."
Cruel.
I
like cool futility. That's much better. It kind of describes our current era.
I agree with Ryan, I think, even if I didn't hear what you just said for the last minute. But all the stuff with the cops just not doing their job and a probably guilty man gaming the system to get a probably innocent man thrown in prison for the rest of his life. I mean, I don't understand how you could see this as anything other than a total indictment.
No, you guys are right. Okay, Ryan and Jack are right. I changed my mind.
Okay, but what I think
no civic pride.
I don't. When there's two images that I don't think are done ironically, and maybe we're wrong. Maybe you'll flip me as well. One is whenever it's either during the sentencing or just I think it's during the sentencing. Colette looks at the seal and this behind the judge, and the camera zooms in and it says, "In God We Trust."
Yeah.
Yes.
And then there's a shot of the American flag at one point from like a low angle. It seems very reverent.
Yes.
I think there is still trust, and how the movie ends as well. At no point do we see a bunch of cops on the take or cops not doing their job. There is no police investigation in this.
That's what makes the movie so damning, is that everybody is doing their job and the result is still totally fucked.
But Colette still cares. The public defender still cares.
Yeah, that's the critique, is like everybody wants to do a good job and this result is monstrous.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Do you
but
I think
but
so
I love and respect that you disagree, Thomas.
Okay, so listener, take your earbuds out or quit listening. Probably just quit listening. Subscribe, you don't have to listen. The end of the film has what my spouse calls a Euro ending, an inconclusive ending.
Oh, I like that. That's funny.
And so when he opens that door and Colette is there, does that mean that she is there to buy the car? Which is how I wanted it to end.
Incredible. I've been checking out that 4Runner.
Oh, I saw that to the DA because she doesn't like her Mercedes anymore.
Yeah.
It's a lot like Fast and Furious movies. The car really says who you are in the film.
Yeah.
J.K. Simmons has the what is it? A Rose On. He has the van for his flower shop.
Oh yeah.
Great touch.
Life Rose On.
Life Rose On. Yeah. I think that's so cute. I thought it was so cute that was the name of his business.
So I don't think, and I think it's the open interpretation. I think it maybe, to my mind, is lazy writing to not have a conclusion like that. But I think she's showing back up because she's going to have him testify. She's going to get the guy off of.
But why no cops then?
Why would he do it too?
If I agree with you that is ambivalent, so I'm not ambiguous. Excuse me. Yeah. Yes, thank you. Mm-hmm. So I'm not trying to say that you are wrong by any means, but my thought was that if there was going to be repercussions for him, then she would show up with the popo, and since the popo isn't there, she's showing up to say, "Look, I know you did it, and we're going to make an agreement to never talk about this again."
She's going to hold up a branded binky with her election slogan on it. But what the ending really means to me is I don't think she is going to do that because she's not going to jeopardize her career. However she's going to justify it, she's not going to ruin her career for it. But she is there to remind him for the rest of his life.
Yeah.
Every time someone knocks on the door, that's what he's going to be thinking.
Yes.
And that's what the ending. That's what the ending meant to me, that it doesn't matter that you got off. You didn't, because you are a good guy who's going to feel guilty about it the rest of your life.
Yes, exactly. After that cut to black, she just turns around and walks away. She doesn't even need to say anything.
Yeah.
And
brilliant.
And the for me, Thomas, the 30,000 foot view of the movie is Clint is saying, like, Americans are amazing. America is fucked. Like, as a system, you know, like he's saying the people on their own, even this bad guy, quote unquote, because we haven't really talked about the boyfriend, but I think that's so important that he is not any different than Nicholas Hoult. We don't know exactly what he did before, but
he's a drug dealing piece of shit. He was the gang that was dealing drugs that killed Cedric the Entertainer's kid or brother, right?
Yeah.
At the Boys and Girls Club.
But I believed that he was reformed, just like he kept saying, like, I've turned a page, you know, I'm a better person now. So personally, I thought he and Holtz were the same character in different clothes, to drive in different cars, to what you were saying, Ken.
Yeah, fair enough.
So I agree. I think that the film doesn't go back to him, doesn't go back to Gabriel Basso's character, who's the boyfriend, lets us, as the viewer, off on the culpability of his decision. Like, it becomes more academic than trying to really drive home that this person's going to be in jail for life because of what this guy did.
Interesting.
Well,
and so he has guilt, but that guilt is separated from him in the same way that this guy is.
Yes.
In the same way, as a viewer, we actually still don't know, and I'm going to hold to this, that if she didn't just slip.
Yeah.
No, that was that blew my mind when you said it at the beginning, Thomas, but I think you are correct that, in fact, everything in all of the evidence for the crime is uncertain. Like, there's no piece of evidence that you can take.
And it's really the medical examiner who was overworked that day, who testifies that she was definitely hit by a blunt object. And he got it wrong, because if he was indeed responsible, then he hit her. But it never really, it's really unknowable.
Yeah, and the person who undermines that is a medical student who seems to know what she's talking about, but is still like a medical student. So who's didn't examine it, just like had the report. So it's a little bit of a question there as well. Here's where I land, because I think I think the movie's intended for the majority of the population who aren't psychopaths to feel for juror number 2 and think, like, the movie is like, what would I do if I were in that situation? It's for people who haven't watched The Collector 3 or 4 times, who are complete lunatics. Yeah. If I was him, I would, like, do anything I could to do some type of test to see if I maybe did hit a deer.
Like, purposely go out and hit a deer and see if it made the same
DNA or
well, no, he had it
movie
fixed,
magic
so
stuff.
It was, I mean, to risk again the explicit content for the 2 cocks behind the editing of this movie, the transition from the jury having a verdict, and we don't even get to see anything leading up to it, really, to his chair being empty, to the guilty, to him and his wife and the baby, is extremely economical and a little bit surprising how smoothly it went from all these various plot points, and nothing with fanfare, nothing with gasps in the audience, nobody crying or fainting or yelling. And
it's
no
really
scream,
unknown.
no birth scene.
It's like maybe 30 seconds of cutting where you do not know, or I didn't know which way it was going to land.
Right.
And you get 2 shots of that seat being empty to contemplate it. Like, oh, where is he? Like, why is he not there? And then cutting to him in the hospital bed with his wife and the newborn.
Yeah. So it leaves it up to you. Was he like, oh shit, my wife's in labor? Yeah, he's guilty. I got to go. Thankfully, they didn't have that scene.
Do you guys think it should have ended with a shot of a CGI deer with a broken leg, blood, limping out into the wilderness?
That would have been amazing.
Yeah,
I don't think Clint is capable of that, but that would have been great.
Or we see it all from the deer's flashback.
You just pan.
The deer was drinking.
You just pan over from you go back to a shot of her dead body there, and you pan over, and there's just the skeleton of a dead deer.
The deer was driving in air.
Yeah. Or she slipped and fell onto the. I don't know. Yeah, but we didn't actually watch until after the end of the credits, so who knows what? Post-credit spoiler there is.
Yep, Nick Fury shows up. I like the way you got out of that. I want to talk to you about the Avengers Initiative. So Ryan, you were talking about Galaxy Brain and stuff. Clint Eastwood. I hate when people refer to directors and actors by their first name. It's like, you're not friends. Eastwood's lifelong obsession, or I don't think it's an obsession where he's thematically putting it in the movies. I think he's drawn to projects that naturally touch on his extremely strong anti-authoritarian stance, which is one of my favorite things about him, and his lifelong antagonist, the system. And both of those, maybe not so much authority in this one, but the system, you can see what would attract him to this movie and kind of what it says through the prism of, a classic old school melodrama.
Yeah, and it reminded me, because as soon as the jury stuff started, I was immediately thinking of Lumet already while watching it, and he does not. I think that's the second growl we've had at the mention of Lumet.
Sorry, keep going.
Dog day afternoon.
Yeah, right. I'm telling you what. Cha 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 cha. It reminded me of Before the Devil Knows You're Dead, that it's like this guy knows that this is probably his final film, and he's chosen, in my interpretation of the ending and everything, to leave the world with a very unsettling message about what we're all doing here and what we think we've been accomplishing.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that I love an old man's lament, and there's nothing better than a pissed off old man's lament. And that's really the energy I was getting from this. And then I thought, to everything that you were bringing out, Thomas, and some of the things we were broadly talking about earlier regarding the wonderful depth of characterization, I also really love that this does not feel like an angry movie. This is a very empathetic movie.
It's a fun movie.
Yeah, it's fun. And it does have that 90s pop boiler recalling old classic genre tropes from the era Clint was coming up in. All of that is working great. And it kind of, similar to how I think 12 Angry Men works, the exciting tone of the film makes it so subversive, because then when you look at the thematics, it's actually saying something quite the opposite of how you left the theater feeling.
He's had a series of possible final films, like the Mule, the Richard Mule, and Cry Macho, that I think were the critical assessment, and maybe even some of the popular assessment, was a little kind because it's Eastwood and these were like movies that had ad campaigns. And a lot of people were like, "Oh, it's the last Eastwood," so I gotta go see it. And I kind of have to squint like Eastwood to see that this is a great movie, and those movies are not great. A couple of them are quite bad, actually. So going into this, I was very much like thinking it was going to be Cry Macho. It was going to be sloppy.
Yeah.
It was going to be a little lazy in some of the storytelling. The themes weren't going to be anything to write home about. But so yeah, I went in like really skeptical about it, and I was really won over. If it's his final film, it's a good one to go out on. It's a good coda.
Yes.
There was some casual stuff at the beginning in the first maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes that when I sat down, I was like, oh, this is Lifetime TV.
Yeah. Oh, I was about to say the same, Ryan, because it opens with Zoe Deutsch, the wife, the school teacher wife, which, man, we need to move to Georgia because on a freelance or like on a local journalist salary and a school teacher's salary, you can get a pretty nice house.
Yeah, Savannah.
If you ever want to look up like what real estate costs in other parts of the country, Thomas, it'll make you cry a little bit. That's
okay. So she's coming in blindfolded like Justice. Right? But it works like, oh, it's a surprise. It's the nursery. And everything up until the actual jury selection for me seemed exactly like it was going that direction. Like it was like, it felt like a Lifetime movie. And then something about that judge and her gravitas and selecting who they needed to select changed tonally for me, where I was like, oh, this is actually going to be a film. And as soon as we get the first flashback, I was like, oh, yeah, this might actually be fairly good. It did lead me to wonder what would this feel like?
Went?
What was that, Jack?
Where Ryan went?
Yeah, did he leave again?
Yeah.
If the previous two recordings do not, you can't talk about Juror number 2 without discussing the botched release strategy that Warner Brothers, now run by Dr. Zaslav and his host of Discovery Network, Dr. Pimple Popper docu-reality shows, and their overriding interests in big tentpole $250 million releases, that this movie was dumped. They were going to release it on Max until people were like, "What? It's the last Eastwood. What are you talking about?" So they released it in a few theaters. It got a great response. They expanded it to 40 whole theaters,
Jesus,
including one in Tigard, Oregon, which was too far for me to go. Nothing nearby me. It released a little wider in Europe, where it did quite well. And as soon as it was released earlier this week for rental, it was like number 1 on Apple and all the other movie charts. So it was a cheap movie to make between what it did overseas and what it'll do in rentals. It'll make its money back before today, December 20th, when it drops on Max.
And Warner Brothers has been consistently, you could say, shitty for the last couple years. Christopher Nolan, famously departed from them after releasing almost all of his movies through them because they did the same thing with Tenet. They totally fucked up the release, and he went with, where's he at
Universal.
now? Universal, and made them $1.5 billion or whatever.
On an R-rated 3-hour docudrama about the creation of the atom bomb.
Yeah,
he made $1 billion.
So Warner Brothers has been doing this shit, and they've been getting consistently worse under Zaslav, who's basically like a comic book supervillain. And he totally ruined House of the Dragon. So lock your doors, Zaslav.
And it's also they've also disappeared a few movies, but at this point, like over 100 TV shows where you can't watch them. They won't sell them to anyone else. And so for indefinitely, there's thousands of creators whose work has just vanished off the face of the planet. And in addition to not being able to watch that stuff, they can't use that stuff to get other jobs. They can't, it's really a horror show of a CEO.
Yeah.
And
So
speaking
what-
of courtroom movies, the fucking Wile E. Coyote movie.
Yeah.
Right.
What happened to that?
I wanted to see that. I was even excited about that. So the one possible promising note is Zaslav is a shameless, fawning, low IQ star fucker. So whenever like stars or big directors that stars like Nolan, he desperately fawns over them and tries to get them back in the good graces. He re-released Tenet in theaters to try and get him for Nolan back for his next movie. Interstellar just released now in 70 millimeter. It's sad, but he's like the boyfriend. He's like the boyfriend in Juror number 2, really. But he's given
he also gave Joel Schumacher's Batman's a re-release, I think.
Yeah, he's like trying to get Schumacher on his side. Doesn't even know he's dead. He's like, oh, he fucked 10,000 people.
But
so
canonically, he's in heaven.
That's true. So this is a big miss, and one of the stories everybody talks about with Juror number 2 is how Warner's, who has made billions with a B over Eastwood's career, 90% of his films have all been profitable, and they made a couple niche, whatever you want to say,
Niche
movies of his that weren't, but it was okay because he would always follow it up with shoot 'em up. Like White Hunter, Black Heart, or Bird back in the 80s. And then,
or $300 million on American Sniper.
Yeah, that allows him to make 1517 to Paris, one of the strangest, most bizarre studio releases by a 2-time Oscar-winning director possibly ever.
Which we will be discussing next season on Redux.
That's right, yeah.
Wow.
And yeah, he famously, Zaslav, the guy who is a champion of Dr. Pimple Popper, hated Cry Macho and wondered why they were making this movie. And the people are like, because Clint Eastwood has made movies with us for 50 years and he's made us billions of dollars. He's like, I don't care. What has he done lately? That's all he cares about. And it's a pretty sad state of affairs for what was once one of the greatest studios as far as partnering long-term with directors. Well, you had Nolan, and before Nolan, there was like Kubrick. Kubrick worked with
that was
for a couple decades.
That was that was the linchpin of their model for the 70s, 80s, and 90s. Is we get big directors and then we let them do whatever the fuck they want.
And then Harry Potter had to come and ruin it.
It is it is not to be too like alarmist about it or whatever, but whatever. Zaslav is doing all this to try and shave Warner Brothers down to sell it at a huge profit for himself. And who buys the company and how that all shakes out, I think will kind of determine the future of Hollywood, generally speaking, because it could be that another studio buys it and then they bring all these titles back, and there's looking at the popularity of repertory screenings, there's like a move to reestablish the canon of Hollywood classics, or it could be sold to a tech company and everything could go the way of this is just content, and it could get shrewder and we could lose more classic cinema. It's a very alarming situation.
I hope Coppola buys it.
If only he hadn't, given us that Voight boner, spent all that money on that John Voight boner, maybe he could have afforded it.
Well, speaking of John Voight's boner, maybe we should talk a little bit about with how everything seems to be delegated towards streaming now, and Apple TV Plus and all those streaming services is where it's at, is where they're dropping shit nowadays.
Yeah, and
on the Netflix and whatnot. And I see this all the time. No one wants to go to the movie theater anymore because it's $50 for a popcorn, and then you have to park downtown. Which I love going to the movie theater. It's like the best thing in the whole world. So, should we talk a little bit about which movies we decided to go see this year?
I noticed. I think the restraints that we put on this when we were coming up with our lists were you had to go to the movie theater, and it couldn't be a re-release. It had to be a 2024 release that you're talking about.
Yeah. And I think a lot of it speaks to, we were talking about like the mid-range of this Eastwood movie, and studios used to be able to pump these out and know exactly what to do with them, had marketing teams who were keyed in on the demographics that would go see it. They no longer have that anymore because they're so keyed towards these huge IPs that cost $200 million and that they could market over in China and other places on the other side of the planet. that they don't know what to do with them. And you see a different, because it gets released by a different studio over in Europe. You see they had a lot of success with Juror number 2 because people still want to see, they just want to go see a good story. They don't need a third act, which is just ones and zeros punching each other. And I don't think they are built anymore because that whole generation of teams that were built towards it, they have been replaced by people who don't know how.
Well,
they just don't know how. Like Longlegs might be the one that we've all seen, and I think had probably the best marketing campaign of any movie of 2024. Really.
And Longlegs was one where a bunch of people my age and younger were going to see it.
Yeah.
It was like super popular on the TikTok.
Yeah, I went out with a bunch of my friends.
The younger people are much more interested in cinema now, which is a cool thing. Just anecdotally, used to see on like Twitter 10 years ago, film professors posting about how their students have never seen a movie made before 1990. And I was listening to a film professor talk yesterday, and he said that his students now have seen 12 Angry Men and have thoughts about the relationship between Juror number 2 and 12 Angry Men. And he thanks Letterboxd and Criterion, but that's really exciting. To your point, Jack and Ken, I love we are lucky enough in Portland to have a number of independent cinemas, and I love going to those whenever I can. But this was the year that unless the kid wants to see something, I don't go to the multiplex anymore because it is too expensive. There are too many ads, all that stuff that I used to 10 years ago think people who talked about were just cranky old people. Now I am that cranky old person. So
we went and saw Wicked, and the start time was like, 1:25 or something. And I wear a watch because you can't always be looking at your phone. And it was 1:55 by the time the last trailer had played and the movie started. 30 minutes after the start time of the movie, and it wasn't just trailers, it's ads for Google AI and all this.
That's
why are you even going?
They had a series of commercials for Google AI that was tied into Wicked, and like 3 of them would appear throughout this range of commercials, and it's like 2 phones spoken like robots. One's a good witch phone and one's the green witch.
Oh, it's like the
one
superhero one that they did for a while.
Yeah.
Yes.
It made. Yeah, and the fact that Wicked worked so well on me is a testament to the movie, because I was ready to walk out with that fucking shit.
Well, that's the thing. That's the frustrating part, is I love the experience of watching these movies on the big screen. Like Wicked, we sat pretty close to the screen, and a bunch of people were there, and it was like a bunch of young people too, and it was like a great looking, amazing experience of watching a movie on a big screen. That's what I love about the cinema. It's magic. Mm-hmm. But going... and it costs too much, and they're playing AI commercials and all that. It really does. And then they're going to release it in 4 weeks on the streaming. Yeah. It's like, why even go unless you're going to the Hollywood to see Sorcerer on 35 millimeter or whatever.
It's so funny. The last movie that the kid and I went to see together was Wild Robot, and we were going, and she. It's an ongoing joke in my family that Jenny likes to get there before the 20. And I like to get there during the last preview. Yes. And so my wife, so I'm going with the kid, and Eleanor's like, what time are we going to get there? Are we going to get to watch are we going to watch the trailers? And I was like, no, the movie's already started. We're skipping the commercials, and I'm sorry. And she's like, oh no, I hate sitting for the commercials. I'm glad we're going. So.
Well, one of the things we have found since COVID that they started allowing people to pick their seats before you go see the movie on a wide scale. So for me, it was like, I always used to show up like 30 minutes early because I wanted my special seat.
Right.
Jack knows this. He was raised taking in movies. But now I could just like 3 or 4 days in advance, though I get to pick my seat. I pick my seat, then I pick where I'm going to sit in the movie. And I started showing up like right at start time because I know where I'm going to be sitting, and I know I'm going to see trailers. And I think the amount of advertising they have to sell to make a profit, that they figured out that everybody else is doing that. So they're not going to have the 20 before the movie starts. They're going to have the 20 when the movie starts.
Yeah, totally.
because they have to be able to justify selling that screen time to their advertisers, which makes it a worse experience for the moviegoers.
Yeah.
And we thank you for listening to our synopsis of Juror number 2.
Well, let's go over what movies did you guys decide to go out. What new releases did you?
I watched
go out and see?
11. I watched more films than that in the theater because Dog Day Afternoon, other things that were re-releases.
Yes,
but I watched 11 films in theaters this year so far. The year's not over.
Let's hear 'em.
My list is this is wild. Okay, the first one I have is Ghostbusters: Frozen Empire. It's a long story for why. Not gonna go into it.
No.
Civil War.
Yep, got that.
Pet Shop Boys: Dream World, the greatest hits live at the Royal Arena.
Wow. I wish I would have seen that.
Again, long story. Aggro Drift.
Okay.
Yeah.
The Hungry Corinne.
Sad I missed
Furiosa, Mad Max Saga.
Yeah.
Yep.
Nice.
Signs of Kindness.
Ooh,
Long
okay,
Legs.
good one.
Deadpool and Wolverine.
Boo.
Which one?
Cuckoo.
Oh, you saw Deadpool and Wolverine? You paid for that? Okay. Cuckoo.
Yeah.
The Substance.
Cuckoo.
A Real Pain.
Ooh.
How was Cuckoo?
Oh, how was that?
Real Pain's great. Cuckoo's great.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, Cuckoo's fun. Cuckoo's a fun movie. Jack and I saw that.
Yeah, we did. We went and saw that one. I thought it was okay.
I thoroughly enjoyed it. I love anything Dan Stevens is in. So
I saw Civil War, Furiosa, Megalopolis, Dune 2, Wicked, Long Legs, Cuckoo, and Love Lies Bleeding, and I believe that's it.
I got Dunes, Civil War, Furiosa, Maxine, Long Legs, and Cuckoo. That was all like in a month. I went like on I'm just going to see independent horror movies. That was fun. Alien, Romulus, Megalopolis, Saturday Night, and Wicked. Probably going to see The Order next week with Jude Law and Nicholas Hoult. And then,
Wow,
You're going to see it with them?
yeah. It's going to have like commentary sitting next to me on either
You guys
side.
are just going to make fun of Jude Law for being a short king the whole time?
No, he gets past.
And we're going to go see Nosferatu
on Christmas Day.
Ryan, what about you? What do you got?
Let's see. The first thing I saw was The People's Joker. Which is we'll talk about it more when we do our best of, but that is a fucking great movie. Everybody should go see it right now. Civil War, Love Lies Bleeding, Furiosa, Inside Out 2, Eno. Do you guys know about Eno, the documentary?
Yes.
Yeah, Brian Eno.
77 million different possible presentation formats.
Yeah, it sounds exhausting.
And then Dune 2 and Megalopolis.
Megalopolis was awesome.
It was one of the best maybe the best movie-going experience.
I think so.
It's when we do talk about our feelings of the year, there's a lot. It's got a lot in common with People's Joker, actually, in the way it was put together and the kind of process behind it.
But I mean, we live in the Portland metro area, so a lot of these movies that we saw are not really available to like when I lived in Grants Pass and worked at a movie theater.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to see the variety of movies, especially you and Thomas had seen in theaters, like Pet Shop Boys.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
Love the Pet Shop Boys.
And Eno. But I mean, a lot of these movies don't play.
Yeah,
in other
if
places.
we were living in another town, I wouldn't have been able to see Eno, Megalopolis, or The People's Joker for sure.
Yeah, Jack and I are really lucky to have seen that niche musical Wicked in our local theater, because I mean, no one else has really heard of it.
I'm gonna be seeing that in the next couple of days with the kid, and I'm gonna see Nosferatu and A Better Man. I think A Better Man comes out before January, but those are the
Better Man. Never met him.
Those are the only movies I will be returning to the theater for.
Is A Better Man the Sebastian Stan one?
No, A Better Man is the
monkey.
Yeah,
one.
the monkey pop star.
Oh, I'm thinking of A Different Man.
That looks good too. A Different Man in
Yeah.
The Order. I will be excited to see on my home.
And in addition to Nosferatu, I'll probably end up watching Queer.
Oh yeah.
I
might go check that out.
I might go see that too. I'm a big fan of. I don't like his writing, but I'm a big fan of William S. Burroughs as a person.
My God.
He's your god. Wow.
None
I don't know
of
if
us
I can
thought-
up that.
None of us saw Challengers in the theater, which was like the big breakout hit this year.
I didn't. I watched that on a projector.
Mhm.
And I thought it was fantastic, and it probably would be my favorite movie of the year if it weren't for I Saw the TV Glow, which is definitely the best movie that's come out all year, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's a great one.
But Challengers had some. Have any of you seen that?
Not yet. That and I Saw the TV Glow. I'm gonna knock out in the next couple weeks.
I've not, but I think Lee's going to go watch that. The director. Oh no, that's Queer. They directed.
Luca.
I'm confusing with something else. He has 2 films this year.
Yeah.
Yes.
And like a TV show. Dude works like Eastwood used to work. Always got something going on.
Yeah.
2 movies and a TV show. And he's gonna what's he working on the remake for?
Oh,
what's Luca? What's the Luca remake that he's working on now?
Oh yeah.
Nosferatu. So yeah, what was everyone else's? We want to run down just favorite movie of the year, favorite couple movies.
American Psycho.
What?
That's what Luca,
American Psycho. That's it. Yeah.
That's unnecessary.
Is it gonna be with Vince Vaughn again?
That would be necessary.
Oh,
More Vince Vaughn.
that
in
would
the
be
world,
amazing.
please.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We want to talk about favorite movies. Favorite.
I mean, quickly.
I mean, it's hard to say because a lot of the best movies tend to come out for like Oscar qualifications this time of year, and then we regular people don't even get to see them until February or March.
Yeah.
But theatrically, I really enjoyed the spectacle of Dunes and Wicked. They were good bookends as far as what going to the cinema and what studios can do with all their toys.
Yeah.
But like Jack, I Saw the TV Glow. Definitely one of my favorites.
And we haven't seen The Substance yet, so I feel like it's not really fair. I missed that one when it was in theaters, but I'm a big fan of that director.
Yeah,
So-
I was a big fan of Furiosa.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting about Furiosa. I saw that and was blown away and thought, like, wow, this is maybe the best movie of the whole year.
Uh-huh.
And in the 6-ish months since it came out, I haven't thought about it once.
Oh really? I've watched it a couple more times since it's been on home video. I fucking love that thing. People's Joker for me was the best both movie of the year and the best theatrical experience of the year. For people who don't know anything about it, a comedian who used to work with Tim and Eric and is trans, started pre-pandemic making a copyright violating retelling of her life story, discovering she was trans as if she were the Joker. She is in a world where there are a lot of different people who are the Joker, and she is one of the Jokers in the world. And during the pandemic, she had to shut down her movie, and she got really upset that it would never get finished. And she was complaining in a very understandable way on Twitter about all of this work. And the internet jumped in, and something like 200 people came on to animate scenes that she couldn't film, to provide acting work that she didn't have time to shoot before the pandemic. It was crowdsourced to completion. And
Oh, wow.
it is in that way, not only is it just, you'll never see anything like it. It's good. It's cheap as fuck. It's punk as fuck. And it was made by a group of people in a celebration of creativity. And it is a wonderful, wonderful.
Very good. Thomas, what do you got?
Oh, I really like Kinds of Kindness.
Oh,
Really?
This is my Jesse Plemons year.
Uh-huh.
Though I liked his role in Civil War. I won't suggest people watch Civil War, but I will suggest people watch
Love
Kinds
it.
of Kindness. And A Real Pain was it feels like a
Really?
movie that isn't quite made as much anymore.
Yeah.
It didn't feel cute, but it has that indie film from the early aughts without being a darling. It just
Mhm.
feels like a real drama.
Yeah. You could see,
Yeah, that's
I haven't seen it, but there's a world where it's like 1998 and Juror number 2 and A Real Pain are both playing at the Megaplex, and it's fine. It's normal.
Thomas,
A
that
real
movie
number
looks,
2 is what we'd call that pairing.
that movie looks totally insufferable, but I'll watch it. I'll watch it for you with an open mind.
I felt
Okay.
both of them looked totally insufferable, but I will now watch both of them for you with an open mind.
We forgot to do Rat in the Pocket, guys. What?
No,
scene
we
in
didn't
Juror
forget
number
to do
2?
it. I had it. We're not wrapped yet.
Huh? What? What scene would be best in that movie if there was a rat and someone?
I was thinking. Chloe having the rat as a baby. And they cut from like the empty seat to them like holding a giant rat. Splinter baby. But no, the best place for a rat would be in Juror 13's purse. And she's whispering to it, and they're solving the crime together.
It's got a little Sherlock Holmes hat.
Yes.
The great rat detective.
Uh-huh.
Is that our last Rat in the Pocket? Maybe
It
ever?
may be the last one ever.
Mine is not as good as Thomas' 2 scenarios by any means, but when Nicholas Holtz drops his coin so that during the "Is there anyone in this courtroom? Do you recognize the killer in this courtroom?" Instead, the rat comes out of his pocket and climbs onto his shoulder, and he feeds a little cheese and distracts the whole the courtroom as the guy testifying says, "Yeah, it's weirdly that guy sitting in the jury box with the rat, but the rat is so cute nobody notices." The movie goes on.
I like it.
That's good.
I think the movie should have ended with a tasteful, dialogue-free sequence of a giant CGI rat with a broken leg limping off into the woods off of Old Quarry Road.
That concludes Rat in the Pocket, ongoing bit for the Eastwood films.
R.I.P.
Unless he makes another movie.
He still could. I mean, how old is this guy?
Yeah,
94.
we talked about
94.
We sadly talked about Cry Macho. Like, this is the last one.
That weirdly, the Zaslav thing. If he were thinking about making another movie, I would think that would be the most demoralizing thing for him. Is like, oh, this fucker's not even going to put it in the theater if I do it.
Yeah.
Well, it is funny. I think Juror number 2 got more press and online support because of the way Warner Brothers treated him. So if that is some fifth dimension marketing, well done.
Yeah, he's just like a pua. He's like, oh, no one really like. He's a pickup artist. He's just cutting down Eastwood so that Eastwood would actually feel better about himself. Whatever film does better than expected.
Mm-hmm. There you go.
That will do it for 2024 and Clintmas. Merry Clintmas, everybody.
Hey,
the first weekend of January. What are we going to be watching?
Well,
Lars von Trier.
We might start a monkey on the shoulder bit. But yeah, if you didn't get enough of us, or if we end up cutting Ryan from this episode, you can also listen to the 4 of us on other podcasts, including Hung Jury, where we talk to and get the opinions of 12 well-endowed Germans who have a size over 5.2 inches. Also, Bailiff, where we talk about Christian Bale movies that he doesn't star in, but what it would be like if he was.
That sounds good.
Yeah.
I like that.
And then also, of course, This Court is Out of Order, where we talk about all the Bud Court movies, but not in chronological order.
Oh my god, I totally forgot. There was a baby in the movie. I thought it was going to be a fake baby, but then it was a real baby. I wrote it down in my notebook. I totally forgot.
They worked really hard to show you the real baby. Yeah.
Yes.
I felt like that
I
was
totally
the real
forgot
point.
to say that.
That
I hear the baby was a diva on set.
That actress was not good.
The baby?
The wife.
That's harsh.
It's a baby.
More shitting, more puking, not real.
That was not what the movie was about. I'm glad they didn't go into exactly why it was a troublesome pregnancy.
There was some puking too. It was from Nicholas Hoult, but he threw up when he realized that.
That's true. That was a good.
True.
That he'd killed a giant rat.
I thought he was gonna say sympathy pregnancy.
Yes.
Okay,
that would have been
still
so funny.
talking.
Yeah. Thanks, Ryan, for the theme song.
and
Yes.
for sticking it through the whole episode.
I will make a commitment in 2025 to trying to have reliable tech and to be on time and to just smack my kid when she comes in the room and demands Nutella on toast.
Whoa.
All right. Well, Ryan will be joining us from jail.
And single.
Very soon.
All right.
Yeah, have a great Christmas, y'all.
Y'all.
Yes.
Merry Clint-mas.
All right. Merry
Together,
Merry
that makes us
Clintmas.
slash gorgeous. I'm not talking at you. I'm talking to you. I don't want to hear about you. I want to hear from you. 10-4, buddies. Destroy. Kill all hippies.
I don't hate it. I just don't know why you're straight from the formula.
You bastards! You don't know it, Bob. I'm an artist! And I must reflect that in my rhyme.
So do we wrap this up and then bring him back, like start a new recording session?
No, I'm not starting over.
I say we just do it without him. He was deselected from the podcast because it was clan meeting.
Legendary actor Kevin Spacey.
Sobriety Lane.
Yeah, same. I'm gonna go pee. Sponsored by Coke Zero.
Zaslav is a shameless, fawning, low IQ starfucker.
It's interesting, the movies.